those who can see through the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses. Those are the words, supposedly, of Plato, who, they were pretty clued up back then. That, often conspiracy theorists are framed as being these sort of fringe lunatics that just simply aren't very intelligent. But I think like the notion that there is some sort of like higher power has been here since the dawn of antiquity, not least through the Neoplatonists and through the Renaissance period in particular. And then I think like the Enlightenment came along and we became generally more scientific, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just like we kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater in a way, in the sense that we became very much left brain dominated. But anyway, today on newearth.land, where we are decommodifying shelter, energy, food and water, making those things human rights, we are revolutionising the housing industry with democratic co-housing projects. You can check all that out at newearth.land. Actually, I did a presentation last night in Lewes, which is a small town in the south of England. That went pretty well. I'm trying to reach out to get to as many people as possible, because that's really how we can do this. This is how we can cause this psychological shift in society where we can use 21st century taxation, which is transparent, optional, truly democratic. It's a way of decentralizing, doing what the government should have been doing all along but never will. But that all can be scoped out in on the website, newearth.land. So today, though, we're going to be discussing Goal 2 of the United Nations Agenda 2030, which, as we suggested last time, or stated last time, the goal 1 is the principal preoccupation, it seems, or the first goal is the elimination of poverty from society. And as I pointed out, this is something that will not be removed, it will only be displaced. So in your immediate environment, things may look very rosy, but if you go beyond the borders of urbanity, you will experience very much what Aldous Huxley was going on about in Brave New World. And you'll see the kind of savages and the people who wanted to return to a more natural way of life, and they get ostracized, they get sort of excommunicated from society. They don't have the tokens to participate in this social crediting system, and nor do they want to. So they'll be trying to find more authentic, primal, permacultural ways of living. And I feel like we can be successful with that, with New Earth being something that runs in parallel to the New World Order. Of course, also Hunger Games very much delivers stories along those themes as well. But goal 2 is zero hunger. So the same thing rings true for pretty much all the goals. And what they share is that they'll say, we're doing this, we'll say we're doing that, we're eliminating this, we're eliminating that, and we're going to do this. But it doesn't mean that that's going to happen in totality. It just means that within your 15-minute city, which they have proposed, and perhaps we'll do a deeper dive on that on a specific video in this series, they will just plan to displace people or displace those problems. And this is, of course, already happening to a certain degree, like gentrification sweeping through the cities. It's becoming more and more expensive. People are getting priced out further out into the hinterlands of these cities. But eventually, once Bill Gates owns all the farmland, where are you going to get your food? When it's been centralized and they are spraying our food with glyphosate, principally, like herbicides, pesticides, and a lot of them are just these GMO, like Franken foods, or like, these zombie crops, where Monsanto are just going around. And this is the sort of food that's going to be shipped into the cities, you see. So they're going to have access only to these fake foods. I've often suggested this notion that it's going to become a fake world. It already kind of is a fake world. But the food is absolutely paramount to our health, of course. And so the problem with this idea of no hunger is that, well, what are we actually going to be eating to satiate our bodies and keep ourselves healthy in this world? And it's going to be sugar, and more sugar, ultimately. There's not going to be any meat involved. And as a 10-year vegan, I didn't have a problem with that for a long time. But then I got ill and I was in denial about it. But I realized, eventually I had to accept that my balanced diet is not a balanced diet. It's just FODMAPs. Like, if you're familiar with the FODMAPs, like these fermentable monosaccharides and polyols, these complex sugars, just a sheer abundance. Every time you eat a plant or a fruit, it effectively is broken down into glucose and sugar. And so I feel like that is actually a massive problem that is underrated in society. And slowly sugar is becoming known as for what it is, which is sort of like a drug. We're sort of in this induced carb coma, where we can't see the wood through the trees. We're in these sort of like brain fog and general aches and pains. All of this is coming about, I think, through the excessive consumption of sugar, and you're not going to have much variation on that, I feel, in the future. So although veganism is ethically, absolutely, I'm aligned to it, there's no reason for us to be harming and torturing these animals. And I used to be along the page of like the idea that slaughter, that like humane slaughter is an oxymoron. Like that can't happen, but clearly it can, because if someone just asked you to choose how you'd like to die, it's like, would you want to just die in your sleep or without knowing about it, or do you want to be tortured for 10 years? And then of course it's a real thing. So I've had to balance out my position with that, but you're not going to have access to meat. They're trying to sort of reduce autonomous independent businesses, and of course 2020 did that quite well, but they're going to continue to centralize land, and it's this globalist communist takeover, which has been attempted throughout history, hasn't it? Like not least in Russia and Lenin and Stalin. We know about this, but unfortunately today, through obfuscation, which is sort of like a facade masquerading like a persona that they pretend to be someone that they're not, they hide behind this humanitarianism, and that is really the underlying psyop behind the Agenda 2030. These 17 goals that I'm outlining here are very much facades for what is ultimately being implemented behind the scenes, which is a very advanced technocratic form of psychological enslavement. Like we've all seen The Matrix, we all saw how that ended, and we're getting closer and closer to the singularity, right? Elon Musk being painted as a hero, Bill Gates, somehow people think he's a genius, and so we're dealing with deception on an incredible level. It really does beg a belief, frankly. So I can empathize with the people, the normies, so to speak, who cannot process this yet because there are dormant faculties in their mind that the people on the spiritual journey are awakening to. But they're simply still in that space of mainstream media. They will be consuming foods that are mostly like GMO, and unfortunately, like we're getting priced out of organic, normal fruits and vegetables. And so I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of like I'll try and put one up here of I think it's a Renaissance painting of a picture of a watermelon versus the one that you might see in a supermarket today. I mean, they're nothing like what they were and are in their natural state. So they're turning fruits and vegetables into candy of sorts. And there's a thing called IBOL, which is the International Barcode of Life. And what they're doing is trying to create a new taxonomy, a new sort of list and structure of organisms, which they will patent. So, a genuine apple will have its scientific Latin name, whatever. They're trying to create a whole new sort of language, if you like, around these fake foods. And so if we're eating fake food, if we are what we eat, then we're going to be fake as well. So we're getting slowly, or quickly rather today, repositioned and pushed away from a natural way of life, more into this synthetic social model, which will be exclusively taking place in these urban centres. Again, like I mentioned, often is depicted in films like Hunger Games. So there's much to be said about these 17 goals, but I don't want the videos to be really that long. I think effectively at some point, you will long for the days when you were hungry, when all you've got to eat is, insects, as being campaigned by people like Bill Gates, and just GMO fake foods that are going to make you categorically, invariably ill. It might not be a quick poisoning, but it'll be a slow poisoning, as I found out with the excessive consumption of fruits and vegetables, which on the surface, the whole food pyramid is ultimately a scam and sort of needs to be turned upside down. In some regard, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the meat is the medicine. Like it's the most nutrient dense food that you can eat on the planet, and there are no anti-nutrients which are very much present in the fruits and vegetables, such as the tannins, the lectins, and the oxalates. the phytates, and just the sheer abundance of sugar. The body isn't designed to deal well with these things. So it's sort of a secondary source of fuel, and the primary source of fuel is the essential amino acids and the essential fatty acids, right? There are no essential carbohydrates. So that's what I think we need to understand it, but that's what they're going to feed us. It's just going to be very carb intensive and protein. There's not going to be much fat because they've sort of vilified fat. It's the total inversion, and it took me a long while to get out of the food psyop, because I'm still, as I say, aligned with the ethical principles of veganism, but I've had to soften my position because of illness myself. I had a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It wasn't very pleasant at all. I was in denial for years about it, but eventually I've brought some meat back into my diet, and I realized that is cured it very quickly. So that's my 2 cents on this second goal for Agenda 2030. And really, we just have to stay vigilant. Like, whenever they try and sell us something that's seemingly all rosy and benevolent, you know that there's something behind the scenes. And as I said, that's slavery, chains of gold, if you like. We will be socially engineered to love it. You will own nothing and you will be happy, as Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum said. But anyway, as I said, newearth.land is where the revolution is occurring. Like, it might be a while until we can get the numbers that we need. I feel like it could be an exponential curve. So this early stage where we're trying to reach people, it's going to be a small scale thing. But the more we are proactive and the more we tell the world and the people that we know, our friends and family, about this movement, which you can, again, go on the site to check out, the quicker this can happen, the quicker New Earth can blossom and we can start to live truly, freely and abundantly on the planet. So with that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.